Hello and welcome into yet another edition of the Pole Position. Tonight here, Garth McMains alongside Andrew Moore. We got a lot of great NASCAR action to talk to you about coming up this weekend. This is our Richmond preview show, so a lot to discuss there. Lots happening last weekend. All four Hendrick cars in the chase now for the Sprint Cup, as well as some big headlines coming this weekend in Richmond. We'll get into those shortly, but Andrew, a couple big announcements coming this week. First off, new title sponsor for the Nationwide Series coming next year. Will not be known as the Nationwide Series starting January 1st. Xfinity, now the new title sponsor for the Nationwide Series. Andrew, your thoughts on that?
Well, aside from Xfinity Series being a little bit harder to pronounce than Nationwide Series, I think that this could be a step forward for not only Xfinity, but the series itself. Getting a new sponsor means that more people are going to know what's going on, and it's going to be a more well-known around the country. So we'll see.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Nationwide next year, they will be stepping back from the title sponsorship of that series, but they will be the second primary sponsor for Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Sprint Cup Series venture next year, replacing National Guard, who's leaving at the end of the season. And Nationwide actually even on Dale Jr.'s card this weekend in Richmond for a little preview of next season. So lots happening there. And Andrew, when this announcement came out this week, they'd been saying for a while that they had a big announcement coming in terms of title sponsorship for next year of that series. Did it surprise you that it was Xfinity?
Yes, because it's been the Nationwide Series for how many years now?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I think it's been 10. Maybe it's just 5. So it's not been that long.
All right, so it's been 5. It's the Nationwide Series. Everyone's Nationwide Series is step below Sprint Cup. Now you have the Xfinity Series, and a lot of people have teams racing things have been switching their sponsors. Like IndyCar is not IZOD IndyCar anymore; it's now the Verizon IndyCar Series. So, just changing the names up, it's just a way for the team or the racing series as a whole to get money, because Xfinity had to pay big bucks in order to get their name on there to buy out the Nationwide name. So, being the Xfinity Series. That means a lot of money is coming into the racing series as a whole, which could improve the cars, how much the pit crews can do with their tools and all that stuff. So we'll just have to see what it's like next year.
Now, the other big announcement that came out this week was that the qualifying format that was heavily overhauled this season in all three of NASCAR's national series will be tweaked again just slightly at the upcoming weekend in Talladega over the Chase. For the most part, the format will be the same. Still have 3 rounds, still have 24 drivers advancing to the second round, still have 12 drivers advancing to the final round. The first round is where these changes come, Andrew. No matter how many cars are entered in the race, they will be split into 2 groups. They will both go out separately for 5 minutes. After both groups have gone out, they will combine their times from both groups, and the top 24 from all of them will move on to the second round. Andrew, this seems a little odd to me in a way. What's your take on this?
Well, as you're explaining it, I'm trying to figure out in my head how that's going to work, and it's a little confusing. It's probably confusing to the drivers as well, just because qualifying's been the same for them for however long they've been racing, and now they're tweaking it, and they've got this whole playoff system for the chase. NASCAR's making a lot of changes to just about everything that they're doing. So I think that this new qualifying system, it may make it easier for some other drivers, or the ones who are completely confused like I am. They're not going to know what's going on. So it may affect their qualifying times or their knowledge of what to do. So we'll see who gets pole.
Now, what exactly is the most confusing about this to you?
The fact that you have 2 groups going out, and then you're combining their times. To me, that doesn't I don't understand what times are you like both groups together go out at the same time, like opposing groups or something? I don't know. Explain this.
The way I understand it is group number 1 will go out. They are going to be ranked fastest to slowest, as is a normal qualifying session. Group 2 will go out and do the same thing. After both groups go out, these two lists will be combined. So say the 3 fastest drivers in Group 2 were faster than the fastest driver in Group 1. The fastest guy in Group 1 will be 4th on the final list. Does this make sense?
Yes, it is starting to make more sense now.
Okay. Now, another thing this is it kind of creates a state of unknown for drivers in qualifying. So let's give an example of Richmond this weekend. Even though this format will not be used at Richmond, let's use this as an example. Say you go out in the first round and you run a 17:30, and you're the fastest guy in Group 1. Group 2 goes out, and all of a sudden there's cloud cover, and the slowest guy in Group 2 runs a 16:98. All of a sudden, you may have been first in Group 1, but you're not advancing to Group 2. So that really creates a state of unknown and uncertainty and probably a little bit of uneasiness.
Yeah, that does make sense, because if you are in that position where you were the fastest at one point and now you're not the fastest, then now you're going to be a little upset because you're not as good as you thought you were. So when you go back out there, it's probably going to push the drivers to try, like if you do get bumped out, then if you have time for one more shot, you're going to go out there and you're going to drive as hard as you can so that you can bump that other guy out. But as far as this new qualifying system goes, I don't know if it'll stick.
Well, I definitely don't think. I don't know. I don't think the new format that they're using for Talladega, I don't think that particular one is going to stick. But the overall system that they did implement this year, this use of rounds and group qualifying, I think will stick into the future because it has created excitement, and that's exactly what NASCAR has wanted. The reason they went to this form of qualifying is they thought the time trial version of qualifying had gotten really boring, and they didn't want fans sitting there for 3 hours watching one car go around the track at a time. They wanted everybody to go out in a group, make it exciting, and in essence, that's what they've done. I don't know that this little tweak they're doing for Talladega is going to stick, but the group qualifying session itself will definitely be around for a while.
Well, with this group qualifying, making qualifying itself more exciting for NASCAR, that's just another way to bring fans in.
Mm-hmm.
So the more fans you can get to come to qualifying, then they'll probably go home and tell their friends and family, hey, you should come watch the race because so-and-so did fantastic in this qualifying round. It was so exciting. Mm-hmm. Whereas one car at a time, like the traditional style, is quite boring.
Right.
So,
well, that's going to just about do it for us here for our news segment. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will preview the Nationwide Series race for this weekend from Richmond. So stay with us. You're listening to The Pole Position here on YouTube. And welcome back to The Pole Position right here on YouTube. Garth McMains alongside Andrew Moore. And we talked about our headlines for the week. Now let's get into the Nationwide Series race this weekend, the Virginia 529 College Savings 250. And Andrew, we got a lot to talk about this weekend.
Yes, we do. First off, I'd like to state that last year we had Brad Keselowski did fantastic at this track. How well do you think he's going to do this year? You think he can get his second win in a row?
You know, anything's possible. That 22 car, like I was telling you on the break, has been basically the best car in the Nationwide Series this year, no matter who they put in it, no matter whether it's Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Alex Tagliani, no matter who they put in that car, it's been about the best car in the Nationwide Series. Obviously, it hasn't won every race, but it's won a lot of them, and it's always up front every week. So I don't care who you put in that car, that 22 car is going to be up there, and that just gives me more chance of having Brad Keselowski in the car, former Cup Series champion.
Yep. Next, we got Brian Scott. You know where I'm going with this story right here. Brian Scott dominated last year, leading just about the entire race. 11 laps to go, he gets passed. First of all, how would that make you feel?
That would make me feel not very good. I'd feel exactly like Brian Scott felt at the end of the race last year. He was so dejected, had his first win in the palm of his hand. Not only was it his first win, he was about to do it leading every lap in the race. I mean, you just don't do that in a nationwide race. And he came so close to it, I'd have felt devastated, and he did too.
Yep, so devastation always leads to redemption. You think he's going to do it?
Well, let me preface this by saying devastation doesn't always lead to redemption.
In the racing world, yes, it does.
That's debatable, but
It's not debatable.
I think he's going to do really well. He's proved he's good at Richmond. He's good at tracks like this. I think he's got a good run in him this weekend. It's actually tomorrow night, Friday night, or it may be tonight by the time this gets up on YouTube. I'm not sure. He's got a good run in him Friday night. I think he does. I think he's got a very good chance at winning. He's been good this season. Not quite championship caliber. He's a little too far back at this point in the season to really be a championship contender. But I would not be surprised to see him get his first win of the season before the year's out. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it Friday night in Richmond.
Yep. And Chase Elliott, first of all, wow. He is first of all 18 years old, and look at how well he's doing. He is impressive. And he just padded his points lead last race in Atlanta, just slightly, but just enough to give a little injury to insult right there, insult to injury. Where do you think that he's going to get win number 4 this weekend?
You know, I think it's possible. He's been good on short tracks this year. At this point, I've learned not to count him out on any track because he's proved to us not only can he do well on any type of track, he did well at Richmond earlier this season, and he's proved that he knows how to get around places with little experience under his belt at that track. His 3 wins this season were at 3 tracks he had never been to before. Darlington was the most impressive to me. I mean, you just don't win in your first time at Darlington, and Chase Elliott did it. So nothing surprises me anymore, Chase Elliott. He's a legitimate championship contender, has a very strong chance of winning the championship this year in his rookie season at 18 years of age. And, you know, I don't see any reason why he can't win Friday night.
18 years old. I'm 18, and I don't.
Yes, you are.
I could only dream of doing what this kid's doing right now. First of all, nationwide series.
You don't have the
leader.
bloodline he does, though.
I do not have the bloodline. No. Points leader, winning races at tracks, rookie year at tracks he's never even been to.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is just amazing. Like, I only wish I could be like him.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy the kind of success he's had. And, you know, last year when I saw him in a few Truck Series races, he couldn't run the full schedule in the Truck Series yet because he was just 17, but he was in a few of them, even won the race at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park last year in a very exciting finish, spinning Ty Dillon in the last corner. You could tell this kid had talent. You could tell he was going to be good. And I knew when I saw Junior Motorsports had signed him at the beginning of the season, he was going to have a good year. But I did not realize that it was going to be this good. It's unbelievable what he has done, and I think we've just scratched the surface of what Chase Elliott is capable of doing. I mean, if this is what he does with little to no experience under his belt, think about what he's going to be like in 5 years after he's got a couple years of experience in the Sprint Cup Series. Think about what he's going to be doing at that point.
Well, 18 years old, he's going to be like any kid at that age. He's going to be cocky. He knows he's successful, and he is going to show it. And that First of all, how long do you think it'll take him to get up to the Sprint Cup Series?
2 years.
In 2 years' time, when he gets up to the Sprint Cup Series, his cockiness level will probably set off some of the other drivers, and they'll want to put him in his place.
See, I disagree with that. I don't think there is a cocky bone in Chase Elliott's body. If he were going to be cocky, you'd see it this year. That kid is as humble as if he were in 10th in points right now. If he didn't have a single win under his belt, was having a mediocre season, let's compare it to, say he was having the season Dylan Kwasniewski's having right now. Dylan Kwasniewski's had a decent season for a rookie. He's not been great. He hasn't won a race, hasn't really even been close to winning a race, but he's been good for a rookie in the Nationwide Series. Chase Elliott has the same attitude right now as if he were having the same season Dylan Kwasniewski is having, and I don't see Chase ever getting cocky no matter how good he gets. He's got, I mean, you look at how Bill Elliott was when he was in the Cup Series. Bill Elliott never got cocky, and I think he's passed that on to his son, and it's a good thing. That's why I have a lot of respect for Chase Elliott.
Yeah, and being as young as he is, when he makes it to the Sprint Cup Series, you have the older drivers who have been in there for a long time. How do you think they'll respond to a youngin going into the series?
Well, they've already responded very well to him. I mean, you hear somebody asks one of these drivers, like Kevin Harvick, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, about Chase Elliott, and they have nothing but good things to say about Chase Elliott. They're very impressed by him, and from what I can tell, they cannot wait until he makes it into the Sprint Cup Series. They're excited to be able to race with him because he's that talented. And they're drivers, let's face it. They want a challenge. They like to win. They like to run well, but they want a challenge. They don't want to go out there and win every race by 3 laps. They want to, as much as they say they'd like to be able to do that, they want a challenge. They want someone that can push them to be better. And that's what Chase Elliott's going to do.
Yeah, and with NASCAR making everything that they do more exciting, bringing him up, they might actually do it even earlier. They could bring him up next year, maybe.
You know, I don't see that. He's a Hendrick development driver, so they've got to have a seat open at Hendrick unless he decides to go somewhere else, and I don't think he's going to. So he's got to wait until there's an open seat at Hendrick, and right now that's not available. I don't see him moving up too soon, and I think that would be too soon for him if he didn't get another year in the Nationwide Series. Look at Austin Dillon and Ty Dillon. Richard Childress has brought them up right. He gives them 2 years in each series before moving up to the next series. You give them a year to get acclimated to the car or the truck, whatever they're in, and you give them a year to run for the championship. Granted, Chase is kind of 1 year ahead of the curve on that, but I still think he needs another year in the Nationwide Series just to get some more experience under his belt. Because let's face it, he's good, but the Sprint Cup Series is a whole other animal from the Nationwide Series. And as good as he is now, he's still going to have a learning curve in the Cup Series, and he's not going to go out there and be a championship contender his first year in the Cup Series like he is in the Nationwide Series. He'll be good. He might very well make the chase his first year in the Cup Series. I don't think he's going to be a real championship contender, though.
That is a valid point. All right, so we've talked about the Xfinity name change in the Nationwide Series. We've talked about the drivers of the Nationwide Series. Garth, what are your predictions for this?
You know, Richmond's a hard one to handicap. It's hard not to pick Brad Keselowski this weekend. He won last year in this race. He won at Iowa, a track very similar to this earlier in the season. I got to go with Brad Keselowski. You cannot pick against Brad Keselowski, and he's always been good at Richmond. So I got to go with Brad Keselowski.
I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. Muscle memory kicks in as a race car driver, and he won last year, so he already knows what line he's going to take, and he's got a fast car.
All right, well, there you have it. Andrew actually agrees with me, which I'm A little surprised by. At least you didn't pick John Jackson again. Nothing against John Jackson, but you can't really pick a starting park car to win a race. That's kind of defeats the purpose. So that'll about do it for our nationwide preview. We're going to step aside here just briefly, and when we come back, we'll have a new guest alongside me, a new co-host, as we preview the Sprint Cup race this weekend, and we preview the chase. So stay with us. You're listening to The Pole Position here on YouTube. And welcome back to The Pole Position right here on YouTube. Garth McMains, now pleased to be alongside Tommy Poole. Tommy, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Great to have you on here. All right, we talked about the nationwide race. We talked about the headlines from this week. Now let's get into what everybody is wanting to hear about, the Sprint Cup race this weekend. Final race of the regular season. Lots of excitement coming in here. 2 spots remain to get into the chase. Tommy, what do you think we're going to see on Saturday night?
We're going to see a lot fold out like normal Richmond. That's what Richmond is. That's how Richmond always is. It never fails. Some years you get more action in Richmond than others. And, there's 2 really spots to fill. Actually, really 1, 2 technically, but we'll get into that a little bit later, how Newman is pretty much locked in. We'll get into that a little bit later. But, it's still really exciting, and that's what makes this Cup, and especially the new format, so exciting, because it states that factor of unknown. And I was a little worried about it leading in. Didn't know how it really was going to be and how it was I've always been kind of the guy that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so I was kind of just confused, curious on how it would be. But I think it turned out real well. I think it kind of gave that that little spark to the fans so that they still like it. And it's great for the drivers because, now we saw it a lot in the season with Harvick and Jr. They won, and their whole season had changed. Now their season was, let's work on this. If we want something to change, let's change it. And that's exactly what they did. So we're going to continue to see that. It's the last chance to dance, basically. So this is almost like preseason in football for those guys who are already in the chase. What do we have? Last chance to work out all the kinks. Kevin Harvick has been, it's no secret that he's been struggling in the pits as well as mechanical problems and whatnot. He's said many times that they need to be a better team if they're going to compete for this championship, and that's exactly what Richmond is going to be. It's basically, here's what you got heading into the chase, and last chance to kind of just do a feel out. And then you're also going to see those who are not in, as in Larson and Boyer, and you're going to see what they've really got because, like last weekend, Menard shot his Hail Mary. That was his last chance. And with that restart, we kind of saw the result of that. And that's also what makes it exciting is because these guys, they have nothing to lose. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially like last year's. I'm not sure that this year's can compete with last year's, but it'll be interesting.
It's going to try to. I mean, it's definitely that's what they're going for this year. They're going for excitement in the chase this year. So I think it's definitely going to try to compete with last year's. We'll see if it can. Specifically on Richmond now, Tommy, Joey Logano won the race in the spring here at Richmond. He's got 3 wins already this season. Can he go back-to-back, sweep Richmond this season, get his 4th win, which would put him as the number 1 seed going into the chase?
It's likely. Anything is likely when you're talking about the top 4 people in the points, all having 3 wins. And also a Penske car. They've really turned their act around. Normally they're not. It is a multi-million-dollar organization, and Penske, Roger Penske, he does everything to a point. He really pays attention to detail, and he's no slouch when it comes to racing in any series. The Sprint Cup program has kind of lacked in years, But the Nationwide car, as you and Andrew were saying earlier, that 22 is the fastest in the series. That's a Penske car. And yes, what they learn in the Nationwide series can transfer to the Cup race. And I think that Joey Logano really does have a good shot because he has had such a good car this year, and he also won the fall race in Bristol a couple weekends ago, which is short track. Nothing like Richmond. Richmond's kind of its own beast, but still, short track is a short track, and Logano has definitely been good this year, and I think that will continue to happen heading into this weekend in Richmond. So that kind of leads us into the track description. Richmond is a tri-oval track, also known as a D-shaped track for its shape. The length of the track is 7/8 of a mile, with 14 degrees banking in the corners, and the banking on the front stretch goes from 14 degrees off of turn 4 to 8 degrees at the start-finish line, and back to 14 as you head into 1. So there's your track description for this weekend in Richmond, Garth.
Very educational there, Tommy. Thank you for that. Clinch scenarios on Saturday night for the chase. As you said, final chance to get into the chase. 4 guys with a chance still to get in on points. That being Ryan Newman, Greg Biffle, Clint Boyer, and Kyle Larson. As you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Ryan Newman, for all intents and purposes, is almost essentially locked in, especially if someone that has won a race already wins the race. Basically, all he's got to do is finish 40th or better. It gets lower than that if he leads laps and such. But if someone new wins the race, then it gets a little hairier for him because he's not that far in front of Greg Biffle. I think it was like 20th or 21st he had to be to still get in if someone new wins Saturday night.
Correct. That's really what could knock Newman out of this chase. I believe he's about 42 points off of Boyer, which is 1 point ahead of Larson. We did the math earlier before the show, and really the big scenario is to knock Newman out, Boyer needs to finish second to Biffle winning. Newman will then finish 43rd, and then Boyer also has to lead the most laps. That can also work with Larson. If he does the same, he will end up tying Newman, and the tiebreaker would result to top 5 finishes, which Larson has 5 top 5s to Newman's 2.
Now, this is assuming neither of those guys win the race as well.
Correct. Now, it also could work if Larson or Boyer wins the race instead of Biffle, and then that would also knock out Biffle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody else wins that is not already locked in, and we'll have those names coming up here shortly, if one of those wins, the first-time winner, then Biffle only needs to work 20 points up to Newman. Back to the whole everything to knock Newman out with him finishing 43rd is very unlikely, as we counted through the entry list. Looks to be probably 5 to 7 starting parks this weekend. There are 44 cars entered, so therefore one will be a go or go homer. One will not start here in Richmond, so then that leaves us with probably about 5 or 6 starting parks. So the only way that really can work out is if Newman gets in a crash and he is put in last place, and he probably has about 10 to 15 laps to make it through. If he makes it through and everybody starts to pull off, then he kind of has that cushion. But yeah, that's also if nobody else wins. If somebody who has not won yet wins, then the way that he can get knocked out is if Biffle beats him by 20-something points. But then again, that's awfully hard because Newman is he may not be one of those that can compete for a win week in, week out, but he is a driver who is consistent, and he can constantly stay in that top 20 area.
Right. Now let's look at the drivers that have not won a race yet, but still have a chance of getting in by winning Saturday night in Richmond. The rule is if you're in the top 30 in points with a win, you can get into the chase. And so these are the guys left that are still in the top 30 that have not won a race yet. Obviously, the 4 guys we already talked about are on this list as well: Newman, Biffle, Boyer, Larson. But then the other guys that have to get a win to get into the chase: Paul Menard, Austin Dillon, Jamie McMurray, Brian Vickers, Marcus Ambrose, Casey Mears, Martin Truex Jr., Tony Stewart, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Danica Patrick, Justin Allgaier, and Michael Annett. Tommy, there's some pretty big names on this list. I mean, obviously the guys we already talked about, the 4 that can still get on points, but you've got guys like Tony Stewart. You've got Brian Vickers down there. You got Jamie McMurray. Guys that have won races in the past, have the capability of winning. Who do you think out of those guys has the best shot of winning in Richmond and actually putting themselves in the chase?
Well, as you said, there are some big names that are on that non-win list, and they need to win. But I do want to make a point real quick. It's not going to be that easy. You know, just because we've said 4 or 5 guys need to win doesn't mean that the rest are just going to take a weekend off. This race means something to everybody.
Right.
Kenseth is locked in. He's 14th right now in the standings. He does not have a win, but he's so far ahead of everybody. If he gets a win, he jumps up to at least 3rd, right behind Earnhardt Jr. So then that can kind of help as well. Also, for the guys who have won 3 races, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Joey Logano, Brad Glazowski, Jimmy Johnson, they're looking for a win as well so that they can maybe get into the 4, the 4-win category. They the points do reset, but for every win you have, you get an extra 2 points. So now, those drivers are going to start the chase off with 6. Those 4 drivers are going to start the chase off with 6 points. If one of them wins here in Richmond, now they've got a 2-point buffer. And yes, that may not be a big deal, but if you remember correctly, when Tony Stewart won in 2012, I believe that was, when he beat Kevin Harvick out, he beat him by a point. So, for those who say, oh, points don't matter, that really doesn't matter, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And racing, especially at a short track here in NASCAR, a 1/10 of a second, a position like last year could mean you in the chase and you have to wait again until next year. But back to answering the question, I think the best people who really do have a chance, Tony Stewart is really consistent here in Richmond. He's really consistent in getting a top 10. Win's going to be hard for him. We saw him last week in his return. A lot on his mind, a lot on his plate.
He had a good run going, though, until that flat tire.
He did. And, that's what it's all about, is seeing how he can bounce back. This is real old news, but Kurt Busch, when he ran the double, he had a real good run piece together. Then his engine blew, and he only competed about 900 miles of the 1,100 planned. Okay, so maybe he could have competed, as he showed all night. He had done real well. He'd been up front, but what happens on those last 20 laps? When he has that fatigue, that could kick in, and he could have automatically been in the back. So what happens in Tony Stewart's mind? Is he capable of running all of the laps, all of the miles, and running to his high ability? So that, is always a factor. Kyle Larson, he's been good. Clint Boyer has done really well at this track. So there's just the competition level in this series is just unreal. And you put them on a 7/8 of a mile at the last race before the chase that means so much to everybody. There's a reason it's so exciting every year.
Right. Now, very quickly here, Tommy, predictions for Saturday night. Who do you think is going to win?
That's a tough one, Garth.
It is.
If I knew, I would be in Vegas right now betting on the race. I just have to take a shot in the dark, and I am going to say I think the best people who have a shot is either Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano, or Brad Keselowski. I say Kenseth because Kenseth has been so strong every weekend. He finished second last weekend in Atlanta. And like I said, if he gets that win, he pole vaults to the top of the standings. And no, he wouldn't have anything for Dale Earnhardt, so he would stay third in the standings above Joey Logano.
In fact, he wouldn't go that high. He would be in 8th.
Well, because right now
it doesn't go on point total. It goes on.
Oh,
wins.
okay, you're right.
Yeah.
I apologize. See, that's what happens with the standings is it's kind of still confusing.
Yeah, the chase grid gets a little confusing. But, yeah, if Matt Kenseth were to win, that would move him up to 8th in front of Casey Kane, who
Correct.
now is 8th now that he has a win.
But 8th to 14th, that's still a big improvement, and
Right.
that can really help you.
Right.
So I would be looking for him. Logano, as we said, he's done really well this season. He won here in the spring. And then also be looking for Brad Keselowski because he's won in the nationwide race. And I know it's a nationwide car, but there's a reason that the Cup drivers run in that series. And it may not be everything go hand in hand, but there's a reason because they can take something out of that. And he may take the right stuff, and he knows how to win and get into victory lane here at Richmond.
Right. Well, I'm going to be a little more definitive than you were. You kind of wishy-washed around and picked 3 guys. I'm going to be definitive. I'm going to say Clint Bowyer wins. Clint Boyer's been good at Richmond in the past. He needs a win to get in. Well, doesn't need a win. He could outpoint Greg Biffle if somebody that's already has won wins the race. But I see that being a hard road to hoe. I think he's got the drive in him. He doesn't want to be shut out of the chase. I think Clint Bowyer wins.
And he won here in 2012, went into the chase, and finished second.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be interesting. And, there are just so many people in this field that know how to get to victory lane, not just anywhere, but also here at Richmond.
Right. Well, that'll do it for our preview of the race this weekend. We're going to step aside very quickly, and when we come back, we will preview the chase itself in our final segment. Stay with us. You're listening to The Pole Position here on YouTube. Welcome back to The Pole Position here on YouTube. Garth McMains here alongside Tommy Poole as we break down this weekend's impending action from Richmond. We talked about the race itself. Now, Tommy, let's talk about the chase. And what we're going to do here, we're just going to go down the list, everyone that's in the chase, and we're going to talk about how we think their chances are in the chase. And I actually just thought about this off the top of my head. Let's go with how many rounds they're going to be in the chase before they get eliminated. That work for you?
That works for me.
All right. Jeff Gordon, 3 wins so far this season. If none of the other guys with 3 wins win at Richmond, he will be the top seed in the chase. Tommy, he's had a great season, his best in years. What are his odds in the chase? And is he a legitimate shot to win his 5th championship?
I really think he is, Garth. 3 wins out of Gordon this season. He's known and he's notorious for, taking most of the season off, being real good in segments. That's not this year's Gordon. This year's Gordon knows how to finish his races, knows how to salvage races, and he won at Indy for a 5th time this year. Yes, that was the start of August into July, but that momentum sticks with the team and sticks with the driver for the rest of the year, and they're on cloud 9 right now. And when a driver is happy and a driver is in his prime mindset, the crew's happy. Crews come in, car comes in, they do their work, they get out. it's a happy organization right there in the 24 stall. So I really think that if Gordon is going to win another championship, this is it.
Right, I totally agree with that. And you mentioned that he won the Brickyard for the 5th time. You look back at past years, the Brickyard winner a lot of time is an indication of who will win the championship. I think at least half the years that NASCAR's run at the Brickyard, the winner of that race has gone on to win the championship. So it would not surprise me in the slightest, just because of that he won the championship. Indy is such a challenging track that it takes all that a team has, and I think that will be the big telltale as we go down through the chase. The fact that this team worked so well together, they were able to win at Indy. I mean, that basically tells you they can win about anywhere. Now, in terms of number of rounds they make it through the chase, I think he makes it to Homestead. I think he's one of the final 4 at Homestead, and he's going to have a legitimate shot. He's won at Homestead before. He's done very well at Homestead. So I think he makes it to Homestead, and he goes right down to the wire for this championship.
We keep bringing up the rounds. Let's take a second real quick. Garth, go ahead and explain the whole round issue for the listeners.
Okay, so for those of you that aren't aware of the new chase format for this year, every 3 races is an elimination race. So after race 3, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, I don't remember what race 3 is in the chase, there will be an elimination. The bottom 4 guys in the standings following the 3rd race of the chase will be eliminated from winning the championship. They'll have their bonus points reset, or they'll have their points reset at 2,000 plus however many bonus points they had and the points they've accumulated in those first 3 races, and they will be eliminated from having a chance at winning the championship. After race number 6, 4 more will be eliminated, and you're left with a final 8 for the final 4 races. Race 9 comes around, you get 4 more eliminated. The final 4 guys, top 4 in the standings following race number 9, will go into Homestead. All their points will be even. Points do not matter at Homestead. It is whoever finishes first among those 4 that will win the championship. So that's the round breakdown very quickly for those of you that may not have been aware of that. And Tommy, you never gave a round for how long you think Gordon's going to last.
I agree with you. I do think that Gordon can make it to that final round in Homestead. Team's really consistent, and like I said, they're just hitting on all cylinders. And when you hit on all cylinders, you're practically unstoppable.
Dale Earnhardt Jr., second in the points right now, 3 wins so far this season. That's 3 times as many as he's had up to this year since he's been with Hendrick. He's had a great season thus far. He's hitting on all cylinders. His last year with crew chief Steve Letarte, he wants to win that championship so bad for Steve Letarte. Can he do it?
If Dale Earnhardt Jr. is ever going to be a NASCAR Sprint Cup champion, it's going to be in 2014. He is never going to have a chance like this. He never has. He's never been close to sitting in this seat before. Yes, he's led the championship a little bit like last year, but then he soon fell off. With the competition level, we talked about this a little bit in the break. Boyer in 2012, he finished second in the chase, had 0 wins. Okay? That's how Kenseth is so high. If we were in last year's chase structure, Kenseth would be sitting 3rd right now, and he has 0 wins. He has the same top 5 finishes, which is 10, and he has 16 top 10 finishes, which is the exact same to Gordon as well. So why is he less than 100 points off of Gordon? It's because just because he finishes outside of the top 10, maybe Gordon finishes in the 30s. Kenseth may be finishing 11th, top 15. He may have finished top 15 every race. That's what keeps people in. That's what consistency does. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. has had that. And, what kills him normally is waiting on that one race waiting on that one race, Daytona, Talladega. Well, now he's won at Pocono. He's won at Daytona. So he's not so much a one-trick pony this year. And that's definitely boosts his confidence, and it really puts him in the captain's seat here. And he's been consistent. So now all he has to do, in my opinion, is, now I'm going to make this sound a lot easier than what it really is, but that's really what we've been doing, is he just gets 1 to 2 wins in this chase and finishes in the top 20s every race, and I think he has a for sure shot and will make it to Homestead. Now, if it's the old Dale Jr., where you don't know what kind of car he's going to come in or what kind of junior is going to be out there, then he could be eliminated in the first or second round.
Right. I agree with that, and I agree 100% with the fact that if he's ever going to be a champion, it will be this year. I think, though, if he does win a championship this year, this won't be his last. But if he doesn't win this year, I don't know that he's ever going to get another one. The momentum, if he wins a championship this year, will carry into future years, but I'm not sure if he doesn't win it this year, if he'll ever get it again. That chemistry he's got with Steve Letarte right now is just about like Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. It's almost unbeatable, and I think that's why if he's going to win, it's going to be this year, and I agree. I think he will be one of the Final Four at Homestead. Joey Logano, 3 wins so far this season. Is he a legitimate championship contender? Will he make it to Homestead?
No. I do not think so. He is in that premier group with 3 wins. He's been consistent. He's beating out Klosowski and Johnson, who both have 3 wins as well. The difference is there's only 4 spots. And is he good? Yes, he is fantastic. He is also having one of probably his best seasons, and we'll have to wait till next year. He's young, so this may be the start of something new. But he really does have a chance here. I just don't see him getting to Homestead because, we haven't gotten to the Jimmy Johnson yet, the Carl Edwards, Kevin Harvick. Most of these guys here in the top 14 who have had, or 13 who have had wins, and even the 16s and the 18s, people who could get in this weekend in Richmond, there are some big names. And, you have to pick 4 of those. That's tough. So he is good, but I just don't see him being one of the top 4 elite in the series.
I agree with that. I think he'll make it to race number 9. I think he'll be part of that final 8. I don't think he'll make it to Homestead, though. He's not, in my mind, one of those top 4 guys this season. I hate to use this term, but I don't think he's going to get to the Final Four unless he backs into it somehow. If he wins one of those race 7, 8, or 9, he could back into it. And I hate to use that term, but and I probably should explain this because I don't think I did when I explained the rounds earlier. If you win one of the 3 races in a round, you automatically advance to the next round. So if someone in that top 8 wins race 7, 8, or 9, and they're not in that top 4, they still make it to be the Final Four, one of the Final 4 in Homestead.
So then they go ahead and they catapult their way into the standings
Yes.
there? Okay. And then,
that
they only take 4?
Correct.
No matter what?
Correct.
Okay.
So you'll have the 3 winners from race 7, 8, or 9 if they're all 3 different winners, plus the top guy of those final 8 that did not win one of those races.
I totally agree. In my opinion, that is also the only way that he can get in.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to hear that a lot as we continue to work our way down the driver list. I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to be like that.
Yeah, I agree. Brad Keselowski has had a fantastic year this season. Had kind of a slump last year following his championship year in 2012, but he's back this year. Along with the entire Team Penske. I mean, he and Logano have had great years thus far.
I think he's in the same boat as Logano. And what my last comment on saying that's how a lot of people are going to be, not that they're great drivers. A lot of these are premier drivers. It's just when you have to pick 4 of some of the 16 of the best, that's just, that just baffles my mind. And it's just so how good everybody and how close the competition is here week in, week out. The Penske camp, it's going to be interesting. They've been in championships the past 6 years in the IZOD IndyCar Series. The captain is just crazy good, really is a freak on detail, and look where it's got him. So with Glazowski's 2012 championship put aside, Penske organization really doesn't have that feel of the pressure come chase time, like Hendrick does. Hendrick is just a power sport, just a power team in the sport, and you're not going to get around that. But I think with time, Penske is onto something here, and I think they are finally realizing what they can do in NASCAR, and I think it's going to be a couple years, and their IndyCar team or their NASCAR team is going to be just like their IndyCar team. So I also think that the only way Keselowski can get in is by backing his way into it. I think that is actually a little harder than what Logano's is.
Now, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think Keselowski backs in. I think he is one of those legit Final Four. And I say that because he's been a little off lately, but you look at what he has done for the majority of the season, and I would put him in probably the 4 best drivers for most of this season. I'd put him up there with the Gordons, the Earnhardts, the Johnsons, the Harvicks. I think he, barring someone backing in and him not winning a race, I think he's in that Final Four at Homestead. Jimmy Johnson, 6-time champion. I mean, what can you say about Jimmy Johnson that hasn't already been said? He's got 3 wins so far. Does he make it to Homestead and have a chance for that record 7 championship?
Now, what a lot of people are going to be saying is based on the end of this season, Johnson has no chance. And I'm raising my hand right now. I'm guilty of saying that. But the thing is if you look last year, for example, Johnson had nothing really going into the chase. Everybody's like, is this the same Johnson? And then look what he did come chase time. It's a light switch. I mean, he could be one of these guys. He could be in Larson's shoes next year and still have just as good of the championship chance as he did, last year or in years preview. It's just that's what makes Jimmy Johnson so good. Is no matter where he is, what kind of season he has, he knows when it's go time, and it's during the chase. I really think that he is going to be in Homestead, and he may be. I think, in my opinion, it's going to be him or Gordon. Whereas if all 3 of the 7, 8, 9 races, those winners, they catapult instead, I think that it's either going to be Johnson or Gordon getting in strictly off points.
I would agree with that, and I think he's my 4th guy for the Final Four at Homestead. My Final Four is Gordon, Earnhardt, Keselowski, and Johnson, and I don't see any reason why he can't be in that Final Four. You can't count out Jimmy Johnson. You mentioned, he's had a bad string of races lately, but he does this every year. Every year, when they get to that point where they know they're going to be in that chase, they start experimenting. They don't admit to it. They never admit to it. They're just like, oh, we're in a slump. But they're not really. They're experimenting with stuff, and they always, like you said, it flips a light switch when the chase starts, and all of a sudden he wins 3-4 races in the chase.
What track was that a couple weeks ago, Garth? They're having trouble. They come into the pits, and the shifting lever breaks. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Was that Bristol?
I think it was. It's either Bristol or Pocono. I couldn't remember which one, and I didn't want to say false information. I think it is too. So we're just going to stick with that, Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
He's driving down pit lane with a wrench in his car, and he is fixing the clutch himself.
Yeah.
He's fixing the gear shifter himself. And I know what everybody's thinking. I saw this on SportsCenter the next day. I even watched the race, and I really didn't even catch it. But I'm watching SportsCenter the next day, and I go, oh, well, there was a bad finish for Johnson again. And then I realized he finished in the top 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's what
Pocono.
championship contenders do.
Correct.
Even in races like that, you find a way. And Jimmy Johnson does this almost every time he has a bad race. That's why he's a 6-time champion and possibly a 7-time champion.
Pocono was the same way. I think it was this year, the first race in Pocono. It may have been last year. But he goes out and, actually, no, it was this year. First race, he goes out and he spins and he brushes the wall. He comes back, he finishes top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything that when Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson are on their A game that Lowe's team cannot do?
I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, they've proved over the years that there's not much that team can't do. Carl Edwards, number 6, first guy with 2 wins. How far does he make it? He's had an up and down year, switching teams at the end of the year, going to Joe Gibbs next year. Does the lame duckness fall on him?
No, absolutely not. As a race car driver, this is your business, okay? If you know that your company's about to go under, if you're a hard worker like these drivers are, they're not just doing it for their team. Edwards wants to win this for himself. And yes, there's something in that organization that makes him want to change. However, the Fenway cars are still really good. And he still does have a chance. He's 6th right now, had 2 wins. So he wants to win this, despite all those rumors. And that would be one good way to end. And he's committed, as well as all the other members on the team are still committed. And it's part of racing. They change. You switch around. A lot of it's due to sponsors now in this day and age. It's all about the money, unfortunately. But nobody has hurt feelings through this. And, they may, but they don't right now, and they're not showing. And that is important, and that also screams out Cup contender, because how you deal with problems off the track, how you deal with things like that. Can he make it to Homestead? I don't think so. I think he is a great driver, and I think he does have a chance, really. But the whole factor is you have to pick 4 guys, and I just don't see him being one of the elite this year.
No, I agree with that. I think he definitely makes it to the final 8. He's there at race 9, but unless he backs in, as we said, wins race 7, 8, or 9, I don't think he makes it to Homestead as one of the final 4. He's going to have a great run at it. I don't think he makes it to that point, though. Kevin Harvick, very up and down season so far. The only other guy with 2 wins so far this season. Has had very fast cars this year. Freaky fast cars, as we were talking about. Especially, seems like every race he's got Jimmy John's on the car, he's freaky fast.
That kind of fits, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. Especially when he's got freaky fast on the back of the car. But he's had a lot of trouble with pit road this year. He's been very open about the fact that he's not been happy with his pit crew. And does that do him in the chase?
And it's not just the pit crew. He's had his own problems locking the tires up, skidding through the box, pit road violations due to speed. But I put him in the same category as I put Earnhardt Jr. Can he get in? Absolutely. But which Harvick and which Stewart-Haas team is going to show up in that car number 4 stall? Is it going to be the one that we saw at the start of the season where he got most of his 2 wins at? If it is, he's going to be at Homestead. If not, there's no way. The only other way that I can think of is if he does, show bits and pieces of that old team at the start of the year like he did in Atlanta. Like he did going, and then he got caught up behind Menard, who, of course, he was frustrated with that. I would be too. But you got to think, that was Paul Menard's last shot at it. He had one shot, and when you're in those situations, you throw the kitchen sink at the wall and hope it sticks. So, the only way that I can see that happening is if Harvick has a flashback and he wins in race 7, 8, or 9. Or if the old Harvick comes back for the chase. It could very well be. And if it is, then I think he seals up my 4th spot. If not, I'll get to that a little later.
Harvick's been a weird one this year. He's had those fast cars, as we mentioned. He's been really good this year. At times, he has looked like a definite championship contender and somebody that you would say, no question about it, he will be in the Final Four at Homestead. Other times, you're going, well, he's got some things to work on. I don't see him making the Final Four unless, as you said, he turns things around in the chase. I don't see that happening, though. I think he definitely makes it to that Final 8, but I don't see him making it to Homestead. I just don't see it happening with the position that team's in right now, which is kind of sad with as good a cars as they're giving him almost each and every week. And, he's really, I don't think, in a position to be a championship contender, not where he's at right now. All right, now, all the guys with one win, we'll try to rapid fire through these guys. Kasey Kahne pole vaulted himself into the chase last weekend in Atlanta, putting the final Hendrick car in the chase. Now they got all 4 of them in there. How far does Kasey Kahne make it?
I say he's a first rounder. I do hate saying it, and it would not surprise me if he makes it to the second round, but I don't see much more. And the reason that I would give him to the second round is, yes, he's consistent, but the number one reason why he is consistent is he's a Hendrick car. And if he was with Gibbs, Roush, Childress, I don't think that he would have won in Atlanta. I don't think that he would have had the success that he's had or the consistency. And, I'm not taking anything away from Kasey because, if he was a dog, then Hendrick wouldn't have any of it. He would have had him sitting on the road, a couple years ago or last year. So there's something in Kasey Kahne. But, I'm going to beat the horse again.
You're making a lot of animal references.
I know I am. There's 4 guys that are going to be in this final. And there are 16 drivers in this chase, and 12 of them are the best. And, there could even be some of the 4 that I left out that could surprise us. And that's just what is going to make this chase so great. But I do not believe Kasey Kahne getting past that first round. If he does, he's gonna squeeze through, and he won't get past the second.
I just think as far up in the points as he is just with a win and being above all those other guys with one win, I think he makes it to the second round. But as you said, I don't think he makes it past there. I don't want to repeat everything you said because basically that's exactly what I'm thinking. But yeah, I don't think he makes it past the second round unless he somehow surprises us and goes off and wins 3 races in the chase, and all of a sudden he's in the final 8 going into Phoenix.
Or just get a win and get momentum. And there's so many tracks that he's decent at.
Right.
And the way that the schedule does fall, there's one of those tracks that he's really good at in each round. So it's possible. Nothing is impossible at this point.
Right. Kyle Busch. We mentioned Toyota's struggles earlier. They haven't been that great lately. The whole Gibbs team has kind of suffered because of Toyota's problems lately. Does he have that chance at a championship this year?
Prior to Atlanta, no. After Atlanta, maybe. I think
Gibbs can those guns for the tires, can they really make that much of a difference?
Here's where I was going with that. I think the Gibbs team has a better shot now than they did, and here's why. Toyota has struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Toyota does not have the horsepower that Hendricks does, that the Chevys do, Fords do. Okay? They're struggling. Now, when you can't pass people on the track, you have to come up, and it's a strategy game. You know, it's like a football game.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't beat somebody through the air and passing, run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what Gibbs has done. Is they said, you know what? We can't pass them on the track. Let's pass them in the pits.
But here's the problem, though. Even if you get all those positions, it's the Paul Menard syndrome from Atlanta. You get up there, and if you're not faster than everybody else, you're going to go backward in a hurry.
I don't think they would get going back that fast.
Mm-hmm.
Look what it did in Atlanta. You know, most the Joe Gibbs cars, Matt Kenseth was up at the front, and he's been up at the front of the year most of the year. That's why he is so high. That's why he's locked in without any wins.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last year, like I said, if we were in last year's point standings, he would be third with 0 wins. He would be in front of Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Jimmy Johnson, who have had 3 wins.
But Matt Kenseth is about the only Gibbs car that has been able to have that consistency lately. Denny Hamlin has had good races lately, but he's not been consistent. And Kyle Busch, if I'm remembering correctly, has had a wreck in the last 5 or 6 races.
It's because it's Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has an attitude problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I did not just solve a giant mystery case.
Right.
That's no secret. But I think, and to answer the question at hand, Kyle Busch does not have a shot. I don't think he will be in the first round. He is a really good driver.
Mm-hmm.
He is a really good driver. Can he keep his attitude calm, and can he be consistent to win a chase? That's the $1 million question. But it's not going to happen this year, not with his standing and not with the results he's had this year.
No, I completely agree with that, and same thing as with Casey Kane. I don't want to repeat what you just said. So, yeah, I think Kyle Busch at best makes it to second round right now. Unless he goes off and wins a couple races, I don't see him making it any further than that. Denny Hamlin, the other Gibbs car that we haven't mentioned yet, he's in almost the same position as Kyle Busch, I think. I don't know that he's really got it going right now. He's not consistent.
Correct. No, I agree. But if he wins in Richmond, that changes everything because, Richmond is his home track.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always done good here. He's won here a couple times. If he wins, then that can catapult him up into about the top 6, top 8, somewhere around in there, and also give him 2 more points, or 3 more points, I'm sorry. So he could have 6 points going into the chase. There's 3 points for each race win you win during the regular season. And every little point's going to help, especially as it gets to the chaos here in Homestead. But no, unless he changes the momentum around, I don't think he has a shot. He's looking in.
Right. I mean, I think it's the same thing. I don't think he makes it. I think he makes it to the third round just because you need those filler guys to make it to the third round. Because let's think about this. We've put in, 6 guys into the third round so far? You got to have another couple to make it there. So I think he makes it that far, but just barely. Kurt Busch, I think, is in the same boat as the Gibbs guys. Although he's been really inconsistent, but he's got that Hendrick horsepower being a Stewart-Haas car. I think he can squeak into the third round, but just barely.
I agree. I absolutely do agree. Just not consistent. It'll be interesting what happens to him in the offseason.
Right.
I'm not saying that ship has sailed. He's not as good as he once was. But
Well, let's think about this, though. Is that team a complete Stewart-Haas team? Because when he was hired on, Gene Haas did the hiring for him. Tony Stewart was not around. He was out with his leg injury from the sprint car wreck last season. Gene Haas did that hiring. And let's think about the majority of the races he has had this year. He has had Haas CNC on the car, or Haas Automation on the car for a sponsor. Is that just a Haas car, and it's just got the Stewart-Haas name on it?
yes, he is Haas's driver.
Mm-hmm.
He is not Stewart's driver. And I
and
heard
this is why he's been inconsistent.
correct. And I heard a rumor. Don't quote me on this. I'm not sure if it's real. I heard it probably 3-4 weeks after he ran the Indy 500, and then I really haven't heard it since, but it could still be out there. Rumor is Stewart has reached out to Michael Andretti, who had Kurt Busch for the IndyCar team. He has reached out to Michael Andretti to partner with him instead of Haas. That way, he could get rid of Kurt Busch. And we know that there's been friction between that.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, judged on your reaction, that's a rumor that I heard, not a real credible source that I got it from. That's why it's kind of, I didn't want to go on the record of saying, but that does kind of back what you were saying. And it's no secret that, Stewart, that he is, it's almost kind of like Danica, really. Danica's in the same boat. She's a Stewart-Haas driver.
But
I don't think
she is Stewart's driver, though.
She's Stewart's driver for one reason, and that is publicity. I hate saying it, but that's just how it is.
Right.
And I believe that is how it is. There's many YouTube videos that you can go in and look at for fun that Stewart does say on the radio that he threatens to go crash Danica if she doesn't get her stuff straight,
Yeah.
So, but I think he would go crash Harvick in the same boat if
Right.
that's how it's going to happen. But yeah, I don't think that Kurt Busch is like that. I think it's just like Danica, and both of their results, not dogs per se, but they're not as good as Harvick and Stewart's car were.
Right. And if you remember, when Gene Haas signed Kurt Busch last year, basically the first reaction Tony Stewart had was he was not happy about it. I mean, that reaction didn't last long because he had to put on a good face because he was part of his team now, but he was not happy that Gene Haas had gone behind his back and signed Kurt Busch.
Well, and it kind of gives a bad taste in Ryan Newman's mouth because, you just went to Newman and say, hey, look, we've got Kevin Harvick, a really good chance to sign him. We're gonna have to give your right away, give it to Kevin Harvick. Okay, so now that makes Tony Stewart, Kevin Harvick, Danica Patrick. How it was last year: Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman, Danica Patrick. Okay, so 3-car team stays at 3-car team.
Right.
And then now, right after Ryan Newman goes, I was baffled by it. They go out and they sign another car. So then now Newman goes, why did you have to treat me like that, especially after I won Indy for you?
Right.
And then you go out and you get Kurt Busch. Well, you know what? The argument could be, what has he done? And the same thing happens this year. He's not a dog, but I don't think he is in that Elite Four group. I agree with you. Might squeak into that third. Would not surprise me if he goes out in the first, second round.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Eric Almirola. I hate to say he's one that backed his way into the chase, but I mean there are these couple guys that did. Winning the July race at Daytona, got his way into the chase on that. Has not been bad, but has not been good this season either. I mean, he's with Richard Petty Motorsports. They've not been the greatest team. I don't see him really getting past the first round.
We talked about this in one of the breaks. Not being bad, but not being good will not help you in the chase. It can help you all season. When you have 28 races or so, you can do that. But once you get into the chase, Hendricks puts a game face on.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing with this chase is Earnhardt locked himself in very first race of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So now that changed their whole season plans. Now instead of focusing on getting into that chase, they could focus on, hey, in Daytona race, I found that we weren't very good in pit stops. Let's change that. Next race, I want to work on a strategy. It's practicing for the chase. You're making changes in the car, especially at tracks that you're going to come back to, like Chicagoland and whatnot, and all those tracks that will make a repeat in the chase. You're trying different things. You're putting in more downforce. You're taking out downforce. You're trying 2-tire stops to 4-tire stops. And all that, you may not be doing when some of these guys are trying to. So then, that just kind of throws in that whole scenario that, you can kind of sit back in the season, but when it comes chase time, you've got to be on your game. Mm-hmm. And Eric Almirola, great win for him in Daytona, but I do not see him being a chase competitor. I think he backed his way in as well as A.J. Allmendinger.
Mm-hmm.
Another halfway consistent driver, so-so, but when you're looking for 4 of the top drivers, you cannot be so-so.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a road course race in the chase, so that kind of shoots Allmendinger's chances a little bit. He is a road course driver, so is Ambrose.
But bringing Ambrose into this discussion, that is who he beat at Watkins Glen for that win. Let's say Ambrose had won at Watkins Glen. I think Allmendinger has a better chance of running consistently in the chase than Ambrose would have, because Allmendinger is better on ovals, most ovals, than Ambrose is.
I don't think so.
Really?
And here's my belief. I think that Ambrose would do better because he is with Petty, and his teammate is in the chase as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel that it's kind of the whole returning experience veteran feel. Allmendinger has been in the series, I think, longer than Ambrose, actually.
I think so, yeah.
When he came back from kart. But the thing is he went to IndyCar last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, he kind of stepped back out and then got back in.
Right.
And as Kurt Busch showed, he finished 6th in the 500. Juan Montoya has won a race this year and competed towards the end of the season with a couple. So, yeah, they're not the easiest to jump into, both series, but it's doable. But I still feel that there is that wild card, and that it does take a little bit to adjust. And even when Allmendinger was in for a while, he wasn't that top 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think either. The only way that they have a chance to make it to the second or third round is really by winning. So that's where I leave those two at.
I agree with that. I think they're both first-rounders, and that's it. Last guy locked into the chase right now, Matt Kenseth. He's the only one locked in so far on points. How far does he make it?
I think it depends on Harvick.
Mm-hmm.
If Harvick shows last year's Harvick, he'll get in. And it also works on who wins round 7, 8, and 9. Can Kenseth win? Maybe. He did last year. He won 4 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then now he's not won any, but he's been so consistent. So now my 4 guys are Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Matt Kenseth. And I think that Matt Kenseth can do it, but he's got to hope that Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Jimmy Johnson win in that, because if those 3 are not in yet, I believe he'll get beat out by points, because I would not be surprised. I seriously believe Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Jimmy Johnson are going to win at least one race in this chase. What round will it be? I don't know. But they are going to win one. Can Kenseth? You can argue either way. You can argue, oh, absolutely. But then again, my argument right now could be, he's went 28 races without one.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, second place in Atlanta last weekend. I mean, it can go either way. But I strongly do believe that he has what it takes to get into the chase. The only way he gets out is if somebody wins their way in.
See, here's my thing with Kenseth. I don't think he will make it to Homestead. I'm not even 100% convinced he will make it into that final 8 for round 7, 8, and 9. And here's why. And the only way I think he's going to make it into that third round is through that consistency. I don't see him winning a race in the chase because he hasn't done it yet. He's not the same Kenseth that he was last year. I think he's reverted back to the same Kenseth that we saw most years when he was with Roush. Just that consistent, maybe win a race or two every year, maybe not, but really consistent. I mean, remember the year that he won the championship in 2003, he won 2 races that year. That was it. So that's always been his MO. He's very consistent, and that's about it. So, I don't think this year with Toyota being as down as they are, and with him having reverted back to that consistent Kenseth rather than the big winner Kenseth that we saw last year, I think the newness of Gibbs has worn off, and that's why he's reverted back to that. And I don't see him making it to Homestead. And if he makes it into that third round, it's just going to be barely.
I want to make a point real quick, Garth.
Okay.
I disagree. And that's probably the first time this evening.
Yeah.
But I do disagree, and here's why. You said that Toyota's down. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that only shows with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. That doesn't show with Matt Kenseth. He's up. He's beat out Joey Logano, Brad Glasowski, and Jimmy Johnson.
But has he won a race?
But that's not the thing, though.
That's the biggest thing with the chase this year.
The thing is especially in this format, you can be consistent, and consistency will get you into that final round, possibly. You can't bank on it, but it possibly can. So all that it takes this year is one win. That's all it takes. And when you have 10 top 10 finishes, just like Gordon, he's done the same as Jeff Gordon with a Chevy engine. Mm-hmm. Yes, they don't have the power to, but Kenseth has still found his way around. And with the whole gun thing, like I said, if you're losing a tenth of a second or so in a big stint, you just made up a second in pit stops, which is crazy, by the way. But, it's so tight, competition level, that it only takes one. It only takes one. And I think he is in position, and when you have 10 top 10 finishes and almost half of those being second-place finishes, it's only a matter of time. And Kenseth knows what it's like and how to get to victory lane, and I think the biggest shock for me come chase time is if we get to Homestead and Kenseth has not won a race. I think it's just a matter of time. I think he's going to win one in the chase.
Here's the thing, though. If he doesn't win a race come Homestead, does he make that Final Four? Does he have to win a race before Homestead to put him in a position to get to the Final Four?
Yes and no. It all depends on that wild card factor.
Well,
Who wins in that last round?
That's what I'm saying, though. Do you believe he can make the Final Four?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know who's going to show up, and I don't know who's going to win. If the story of the season stays true, like it normally is, or like it has this season, then it's going to be, I think he can absolutely do it. But now if people start winning and they take advantage of that wild card factor, then I think he must win or he's gone.
Right. I agree to an extent, but I'm still not convinced he can make the Final Four.
Garth, even I'm not convinced.
You sound pretty convinced.
Well, it's just one of those, I'm not convinced on any of these. And I know that you're saying you're convinced, and even on ones that I say that it's going to be this way, we're not convinced because it hasn't happened. And as at the start of the season here in February, I could have said, hey, AJ Allmendinger and Eric Almirola is going to make it in the chase,
And I'd have laughed in your face.
Yeah, and Stewart's going to be out. Clint Boyer's going to be outside looking in. Biffle has a chance to get bumped. You'll laugh at me, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying is, even though it may make sense on paper, we won't know until it comes.
As crazy as it sounds, I mean, on that same note, A.J. Allmendinger and Eric Almirola may somehow find their way into that Final Four.
Absolutely.
That's how this chase is set up.
And that's exactly what NASCAR wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what NASCAR is getting,
Mm-hmm.
is they want that excitement. And Andrew and all of us have talked about it during the break,
Mm-hmm.
is your ticket prices are expensive for practice day or whatever. And when fans go, they want to see excitement.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like an actual sporting event because NASCAR is a sport, racing is a sport. So it's just like sporting event. It's all about drama. You know, if you flip on Thursday Night Football, just started this weekend, Packers, Seahawks, if you go into your room tonight, you get into the house or your dorm or wherever you are, and you turn on that game and that score is 41-0, are you going to stick around and watch it?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Unless
Exactly.
you're a diehard Packers or Seahawks fan.
So that's what NASCAR wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's no secret that they're starting to lose some fans compared to what they had 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to be a little smaller. They're hurting a little bit, but they're definitely still big.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is they're wanting, and that's the Talladega format as well. They're trying to change all that to see what they can do to get more fans.
Mm-hmm.
They want those fans back. And I mean, I really think NASCAR's onto something with this chase because it is so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it kind of hurts them in ways because it is a little confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those people who kind of stick around or they stumble across the channel come race day, they're actually going to see it. And maybe if they even only catch one race of the chase, it's still going to be exciting what they watch, and they're going to keep them the entire race.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with that. And I applaud NASCAR for doing that, for being willing to make changes like this. Because like you said, they are losing fans, not maybe as quickly as some other sports are at this point. But, you know, I applaud them for doing things like this. And I like 99% of the changes that they've made this year and recently with the chase and with qualifying and all that. And I'm happy to see them do things like this. It spices things up, and the more fans they can pull in, the better.
It's all a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that it's kind of come to this. Sponsorship's the same way. That's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that's how it's probably going to be for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And viewers, fans, that without them, NASCAR's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Any sport is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, I do agree with you. Kudos to NASCAR for recognizing that and making a decision. And they're going to need to work out some of the bugs.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, like in Richmond, with Newman, you know, that's a really good story. We thought about that together right before we went on air, and we kind of thought that was really cool. And then we thought, oh, well, starting parks. So, you know,
Yeah.
So what if NASCAR starts? I know that's going to really hurt something,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just unfortunately part of NASCAR. But are they going to do something about starting parks like that? Are they going to take away those positions and say, hey, only 37 cars are actually racing? Then instead
that
of having
wouldn't-
43 points, we're just going to start 37 points, and they won't get any points. Because
That
that's kind of
wouldn't-
pointless, really.
I don't think that would change anything, though, because if you did that, that would lock Newman into the chase. So
Not necessarily, because what if Newman has... I don't think it would have, because I think we would still be in the same predicament, because the reason... Now
no,
you can
because
say...
he is, 42 points in front of Boyer?
Correct, but he's that way because of the point standings the way it is right now.
Right.
So, you know, maybe he did
You can't change how many points he's gotten in each race so far, though.
Sure he can, because every race that he's had... So, I'm not saying for the last race of the season. I'm saying next season, what if they redo the point standings and say,
Oh, I see
okay,
what you're
so
saying, yeah.
every starting park car does not count as point standing.
Mm-hmm.
Because then, yes, like if they did that for this race, it would make no difference.
Right.
It would actually hurt those Boyer and Larson right now.
Mm-hmm.
But next season, that would bring that spark in.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, now you get even more confusing and more dynamic. But the thing is for diehard NASCAR fans, that creates the spark, and that creates even more entertainment and more excitement. And that's what NASCAR needs. Because even if, say, we run into a student here at Vincennes that doesn't really like NASCAR, us being huge NASCAR fanatics, we could go, man, look at all this drama, and like explain it to them. And now, they might go, hey, I hate racing. It's just left turns. But that does kind of sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then they'll tune in, get a good look. If they like what they see, you just got another fan. And that's what NASCAR is doing, and that's what they want. And they're going to continue to do that with little hodgepodge things. And it's just a dry run. And they'll live and they'll learn from it, and they'll do the good things from last year or from this year, and they'll keep it next year. And the things that were then they'll redo and make them better.
Definitely. Well, that will just about do it for our chase preview, our almost hour-long chase preview. So we're going to swing it over now to Ryan Gierman for our White Flag Lap segment, and then we'll come back and wrap it up once Ryan is done.
All right, thanks, Garth. This is the last lap. I'm Ryan Gierman, and here are your latest stories in NASCAR. From September to December, loud music and screaming fans wouldn't strike anyone as unusual at Seattle Century League Field, but on a Monday morning in June, when the stadium usually sits quiet, music pumped through the crisp summer air, and hundreds of children cheered, jumped and danced just outside the home of the Super Bowl winning Seattle Seahawks. They were waiting for two of Seattle's brightest stars in sports, NFL quarterback Russell Wilson and 17-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race winner Kasey Kahne, to kick off the drive, a 2-day fundraiser pep rally that Russell Wilson and Kahne organized. With their combined star power, the duo was raising money for the Boys and Girls Clubs of King County and having some fun while they were at it. And in other news, Richmond International Raceway and Circle Sport Racing will honor a homegrown NASCAR legend this weekend with a series of tributes to the late Junie Donlavey. Circle Sport, which will field the Joe Falk-owned Chevrolet this weekend for veteran David Stremme, announced Friday that the team will change its car number from 33 to the familiar number 90, that Donlavey campaigned for all but a few of his 863 races in NASCAR's Premier Series as an owner from 1950 to 2002. Back to you, Garth.
Thank you, Ryan. That lap here on the pole position. Tommy, your final thoughts here tonight as we await the races in Richmond this weekend and the start of the chase for the Sprint Cup.
A crazy race, recap a crazy season that previews for a crazy chase. That's as quick as I can put it, as simple as I can put it. It's going to be something else, and don't blink, folks. You'll miss it. It's like the round idea, like the way this chase has shaped up to be, and so far it hadn't disappointed yet. And the only way that it could do anything other than what we've seen so far is only get better. I can't see it getting much worse.
I agree with that. I mean, I was one of those skeptics at the beginning of the year that I wasn't real sold on the new chase format in the beginning. I like it now. I like the excitement it has brought so far. And we're not even into the meat of the chase yet. This is just the race to the chase. If we've got this much excitement now, I am really excited to see how much we're going to have as we go through the chase. I'm just excited for this weekend. I'm excited to see lock down who gets those last two spots in the chase. And I'm ready to go. I'm ready for this. So, yeah, that'll about do it for us tonight here on the pole position. A little bit of an elongated show tonight, longer than normal, but it's okay. We
had to talk about.
We did have a lot to talk about, and it was fun having Tommy on here. We'll have him on in the future. Again, thanks to Andrew for being on, as always. Always a very insightful analyst. And at that, I'm Garth McMains saying thank you for listening to The Pole Position here on YouTube.